So thanks again, Chris, and good morning, or good morning, everyone, or afternoon if you're in England or UK or elsewhere in Europe. Chris, when you asked me several weeks ago to choose 12, I almost bust out laughing because of the sheer mass of what's going on in this industry. To put it in perspective, since we opened the Silicon Valley office about 5 years ago, we have chronicled 2,766 auto tech companies worldwide. I got a count from research this morning, as a matter of fact. And this is these guys are everywhere in the world. We actually have two clients in Israel now, one in UK. So they are. This technology is by no means centered just in North America. So we could have done 50 and had the same results. And one thing that we do, and we wanted to make sure we did for this presentation, was separate the hype from the honest to goodness commercial viability. And that's hard to do sometimes, but we think we have 12 that are certainly going to be commercially viable, and one or two have already proven that they have. Two main trends for you this morning that we have seen that also helped in our choice is the fairly marked move we've seen the last 6 months from my daughter's favorite word, FOMO, the fear of missing out. For 15 years, many of the tech investors worldwide have dipped their toes into the landscape, but now we are seeing all-out purchase acquisitions, M&A, which is great for us, of course, and they are no longer just testing the river with one foot. They are jumping in with both feet and their whole body. So this has changed a lot of what we've done recently. And as I go through this today, I'll talk about some of the ways that the big guys like Mobileye have started cementing their relationships with some of these guys. And second trend, I'll stop and then I'll get to the presentation, is the even more marked than last year move away from level 5. We almost have no money these days chasing level 5. It has become very limited, as you know, geofenced golf courses, private communities, college campuses, and so forth. Unless you own the company like Amazon and what they were doing with Zoox, we don't see much change in that. So the first two are going to be electrification oriented, something that Will and Joe talked about extensively. And we knew we had to pick a battery company because that's what is most important these days in terms of getting the price of the vehicle down below those of an ICE engine car, because if it doesn't, it's just never going to gain, the trend is never going to gain much traction, in our opinion. So we chose a uncontroversial one, let's put it that way, Solid Power in Louisville, Colorado, that has replaced the flammable liquid electrolyte with a proprietary solid electrolyte, making their batteries safer with longer range, much faster charging, increased density, lighter weight, and longer life, something we would like in every auto part, right? Ford and BMW have already committed pretty much to using solid state in their vehicles, and they SPAC'd up June 15, 2021, including investments in the pipe, I believe, from Ford and BMW at the same time. You all are probably surprised we didn't choose QuantumScape, and there are a lot of reasons for that. QuantumScape has certainly had the most hype recently, and it is backed by Volkswagen. It uses a top secret revolutionary ceramic material that could enable the manufacture of these batteries, but they are publishing very little information about this material, so it's hard to opine on it yet. The market will take care of that. And also, like another competitor, Ilika in the UK, but they have a lot of non-automotive production, so we did not include these. And right in line with what Will and Joe just talked about, electric motors have changed drastically. The trend we are seeing most pronounced is axial flux, which is, I won't go into description, but it looks like a pancake with a rod sticking out of it. So you get more concentrated power, higher torque, and importantly, eliminates the need for a gearbox in any vehicle. So this in and of itself saves a lot of weight. We chose Highlands Power in Sacramento. There have been other deals already in the space, specifically AASA, based in UK, was just bought outright by Mercedes. And I would love to be on that conversation where Mercedes called Ferrari, who had been buying AASA's product, and said, well, I have some good news and bad news. We now own the company. So Ferrari, we haven't seen the shakeout from that, but it's very interesting dynamic. But Highlands has great architecture and a simple platform that can be used across many uses, from electric scooters to airplanes and everything in between. And importantly, the motor is stackable, so you can have as much power as you want to on a specific axle. And you're wondering the secret sauce, and it is with them a very novel cooling system, unlike any we have seen in the industry. You knew I'd have to talk about LiDAR today. Just as an aside, we have published our LiDAR consolidation theory to many investors around the world, and so far everybody has bought off on it. We have 2 LiDAR companies at market. These guys' sense are a little bit different though. They are the first users of VCSELs and SPADs, something that's you don't hear in the common language every day. I won't even try to tell you what these mean, but VCSEL is the laser emitter and SPAD is the type of laser receiver. But these guys have the first real solid state LiDAR that we have seen. Others have kind of danced around it, such as Velodyne. But so far, Sense is the leader in getting this product commercialized. They have a long way to go, financially and otherwise, but we have really liked their technology over the months we've been dealing with them. One thing that I don't believe Joan will talk about this, but we've seen a lot of advancement with 4D radar. And for this analysis, we chose Vayar in Israel. The 4th dimension is time, something you probably weren't expecting. But these guys use time of flight to understand the 3D environment with regards to elevation, helping them distinguish between a mother and her child crossing the road and a tree branch. Very impressive stuff. Works in all weather conditions and has a lot of uses for the automobile industry, including child detection, seatbelt reminders, intruder alerts, and so forth. Keep an eye on these guys. You're going to hear a lot from them in the next few weeks and months because they have shown themselves to be an essential component of the sensor suite for anything level 2 and above. Consignia, a company that's been around a while and is starting to gain considerable traction in vehicle to everything, which is becoming important. It was critical in level 5, but it is also still important with level 2, 3, and 4 particularly. Their software gives tier 1s and OEMs the ability to build vehicles with this V2X capability. And it includes vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to pedestrian network, and so forth. And the cars will talk to others, such as traffic lights and data centers. And it compensates for some of the limitations of LiDAR. I was in a meeting this past week with the leading traffic light component supplier, and all the hardware guys are looking for software like consignias. So we believe you'll see good things and big announcements from these guys pretty soon. So one of the big trends, as you guys know, is mapping and localization. And by golly, NVIDIA threw down the gauntlet last week with its acquisition of DeepMap, based in Palo Alto. Has been the clear leader, we think, in mapping and localization for at least 3 years with centimeter level precision. I'm not making that up, but they have a very efficient system, which obviously NVIDIA was banking on. And I mentioned when I started that we're seeing the move away from FOMO, and this is a perfect example. NVIDIA and Intel want to be the leader in mapping and localization and various kinds of vehicle to infrastructure models. So they have chosen this as their foothold. Others, particularly this week, Mobileye made it very clear to us that they want to be the leader in ADAS. So you're going to start seeing other announcements from them pretty soon in that regard, we believe. So here's a new one, autonomous rideshare. Rideshare has been around for quite a while, of course. These guys have not. Halo.car, based in Las Vegas. They are running a pilot with T-Mobile such that the user, you, opens your app and request an electric car for a specific date and time, just like you would an Uber or Lyft. The car is driven to you by a remote operator. The vehicle arrives to you and you keep it and drive it, then drive it for the duration of the booking and bring it back to wherever you want. And the remote operator puts it back in the garage or sends it on to the next customer. And it's a very simple model. The upfront daily fee includes everything, including unlimited charging, so you have no fuel cost. Interesting, second bullet from the bottom, 9 cameras, radars, and ultrasonics, no LiDAR on these things. I'll let you come to your own conclusions as why, but the last point is important because this uses T-Mobile's mid-band 5G network. So why did we include this one? We feel like it sets the stage for more telecommunication companies to assume a more prominent role in mobility. We are pretty sure that's coming. And if this works, you can bet your bottom dollar that they're going to be rolling this out in more places, and other guys such as Verizon are going to start to get into this, and V2X and everything similar. So this could greatly disrupt the mobility industry by offering the convenience of Uber and Lyft with the flexibility of car sharing and driving to your destination rather than the expense of a 40-mile Uber trip. Very interesting. And also the driving cost are up to 20% lower than those of Uber or Lyft. So it's could be big news for the industry if it works. We felt like we needed to include micromobility. We chose Ride Report in Portland, though I'll say up front, this landscape is really, really crowded, no pun intended. There are companies throughout North America and Europe doing this. These guys have made considerable advancement now in more than 70 cities worldwide. I love the fact that they certify their scooter and e-bike operators. Not sure what that means, but they promote that pretty heavily. And they use and monitor vehicles, scooters, e-bikes, you name it. So it's kind of a one-stop shop for the governments around the world to operate their micromobility, and is great for city planners and and elected officials that are responsible for this. So we've seen good things from them, and I think you will too in the coming months. So of the 12 today, this is the wow one. I encourage you to look them up on the website, and you'll have to look at the videos 2 or 3 times because you can't really, it's hard to grasp at first what they're doing, but this stuff is just genius. Materials engineering, smart glass. The technology allows a piece of glass to change from transparent to varying degrees of opaque on demand, including something that looks like blinds or shades that you can roll down in a restaurant just by touching it. They use 3 different technologies to get there. I won't go into the background of those, but they're very sophisticated, and the automotive uses include dynamic shading, such as the sunroof, transparent displays, and that pesky solar control that we were beginning to hear so much about. So based in Israel, good things coming from them. We are following them very closely now. We knew we couldn't have this presentation today without talking about cybersecurity, which is, in our opinion, still greatly misunderstood, greatly segmented in terms of the technology, greatly segmented in terms of whether even, for example, encryption is necessary. But these guys have put themselves out there as being a leader with fairly new and different kind of technology. A lot of things in the vehicle are vulnerable to hacking because of a lack of strong controls. So Mokana solves these issues by securing the integrity of the messaging, securing the digital keys, rotating the digital keys. I have no idea what that means, but it sounds good. And tamper-resistant delivery through the supply chain. So they have tweaked the terminology over the last few months to differentiate themselves. We hope they'll make it because it's really an attractive offering. So gesture control is becoming prominent and desired with the tier ones, particularly we have seen. We have followed Gestus since their inception about 4 years ago, I think, and it's really just amazing stuff. Their touchless technology enables cameras and sensors within the vehicle to see, understand, and respond to human movement. Changing the radio, turning off the air conditioner, resetting the mirrors, I mean, you name it, there are just an abundance of things their technology can do within the automobile, infotainment particularly, and passenger monitoring and driver awareness. If we have time, I will speak about the driver monitoring. Well, I will next on Adam's slide, but driver awareness is becoming critical for most of these DMS providers and fleet management companies worldwide. So we see Gestus as one of the leaders in gesture control. I think they will continue to be so, and we get a lot of referral and references from other companies just because of the prolific nature of their technology. And last but not least, driver monitoring has grown geometrically in demand the last year or so. A lot of that, of course, has to do with the fact that level 5 is not going to happen as we know it for a long, long time. So the focus is now on level 3 and 4 and 4 plus, because the driver has to remain in the vehicle. These guys are based in Israel. Very smart group of PhDs and other software engineers that are the first ones to be able to monitor a driver's cognitive state. I'm not making that up. They use any hardware with a camera to set a baseline for the driver's cognitive state before he gets behind the wheel. And using this baseline, they can measure deviations from the baseline based on intoxication, marijuana, fatigue, you name it. So this company is way past proof of concept. They are the only ones that have been able to penetrate this cognitive state, and it allows drivers and fleet managers to prevent driver error well in advance by their ability to create this baseline and look at the deviations. I would encourage you to look at Adam's video, which is part of the offering today and tomorrow. It's a lot to read and a lot to understand. I hope there's a video in there. If not, we'd be glad to have them send you one, but it's very impressive technology. And it is, importantly, filling that void in the DMS I was talking about earlier. This has become so prolific for guys all over the world. Mobileye, NVIDIA, Seeing Machines in Australia particularly. Adam's technology is quite unique and just is no longer about the driver falling asleep and his eyes closing or whatever. It's about getting into his actually mental state based on sobriety testing, essentially. So, as a follow-up for some of the things the guys at McKinsey said, we get asked almost every day, it seems, by legacy suppliers on what kind of investments to make and where their dollars should be going. As you've heard already today, vehicle data is huge, huge in a good way and huge in a bad way, depending upon which side of the repair fence you're on, meaning if you can't access the data, you're having a tough time. But it's we have seen the dongle still in question. So we were very careful to clarify there's certain types of vehicle data that is still available and is still being used by DMS and fleet management companies everywhere. Electrification goes without saying. The electrification in the vehicle, as well as the infrastructure system around the world, which is really to us the big gray area right now. The technology is there to do the vehicle, as Tesla has shown, but the infrastructure is not. The trillions about to be spent on infrastructure will certainly help that, but it is going to be a while. Logistics and fleet, probably number 2 on our hit list from worldwide investors. Most of you probably know that if you Google mobility investment banking, we usually show up first. So we get contacted by investors all over the world, hedge funds, sovereign wealth funds, eternity funds, you name it, telling us what they want. And we survey them and ask them. So right now, I think electrification is first and logistics and fleet management around the world is second. These are big opportunities that are looking for dollars from all kinds of companies, including aftermarket suppliers. And by golly, my time's up. And last but not least, last mile mobility. We're seeing a lot of it. And honestly, the landscape is very littered. We got a deal this week from a company based in Europe that has invented a just incredibly unique, I don't know how to describe it, delivery system, organization and delivery system for the back of a van that saves a lot of time for UPS drivers and FedEx drivers and Amazon drivers and so forth. We are working with them now to decide whether to incorporate it into the vehicle itself, which is quite exciting. So these three categories are big. There's a lot of availability in it. If any of you legacy suppliers would like to talk with us about it, we'd be very pleased to do so. And there is our contact information. Chris, I'm done.
All right. Dan, that was fantastic. It's just so great to see some of these new technologies that are emerging and being commercialized. I do love your mention of Adam Cogtech. We did record a session with the CEO, and it's available in the on-demand content. And if I remember correctly, there is a short video embedded in that of their technology, and it's mind-boggling with their proposing.
No pun intended.
Yeah, right. Exactly. No, I actually intended that one, but anyway, yeah. So I got one question for you here, and I think that this could really help our audience understand that your perspective, where you're coming from, and you have such a unique visibility into all these different types of companies, technologies, the trends, where things are headed. And you even mentioned how we were racing to AV and level 5. We backed off of that, and now it's focused in different areas. So you have a unique awareness. How does that awareness of all these emerging technologies help you advise your clients with their strategies?
Well, I think the first thing, Chris, it helps us choose our clients. So we turn down more deals than we take just because of what you just said. As you know, as everybody listening knows, a lot of technology solutions are developed where there really are no problems. So we have to understand that a technology is commercializable, and if there's not really a problem right then, there's nothing for us to do. So the first answer to your question is it helps us advise prospective clients on whether they can obtain funding via us or via anybody else. And, you know, it's tough to tell a grown man that his business is worthless, but we've had to do that a lot of times, both in the legacy industry and in the auto tech industry. Does that help?
Yeah, for sure. Exactly. And obviously you're not going to put your money into something that it's not commercial viable and would not provide significant returns to you. And so that probably helps them. What about some of the companies that do have commercially viable products and services? How do you advise them with all of this knowledge base that you have?
So the first thing is it's very easy for us to test the waters for them because of the strength of our proverbial Rolodex. We can make 10 calls and find out whether this is going to be commercially acceptable to some of these guys. The landscape has become really littered in terms of who the investors are. I mentioned earlier sovereign wealth funds and hedge funds and guys like that, and they own so many auto tech companies now and automotive companies that they are our first go-to line. It's easier to contact them than it is the tier 1s and tier 2s and aftermarket companies because there's no conflict. Meaning, that's the other way we help these auto tech guys is they're, the word partner is sorely misused, where we're looking for a partner and we got a partner. I said, okay, well, what exactly does that mean? What does that mean to you? Well, we talking to brand name OEM and they want to invest $10 million and we're doing this. Wait a minute. Have you heard the word exclusivity or right of first refusal yet? So at that point, it's really guidance for them to try to get them to the proper investor without being conflicted. So, so far, my answer to your question is guidance.
Okay, excellent. Well, that's fantastic. And thank you again for the insights and the peek into the future of where we're headed with some of these technologies. So that was outstanding.